first time I saw her, she was standing in my dead wife's bedroom, staring down at me from the second floor window. I nearly dropped dead right there in the yard. For 40 years, I've worked as a welder, breathing smoke and fire, building steel with my bare hands. I'm not the kind of man who scares easily. But what happened on my farm still keeps me awake at night, gripping a rifle beside my bed like a terrified child waiting for dawn. After my wife, Maria, died from cancer, the farmhouse became a graveyard of memories. The place was too big for one man, but I couldn't bring myself to leave it. Every hallway still smelled faintly of her perfume. Every creaking floorboard sounded like a ghost refusing to move on. So it was just me and my old dog, Bosley. Every night, I'd walk the property before bed. The silence out there felt peaceful in a strange way. Endless fields, cold wind brushing through the crops, the moon hanging over the barn like a watchful eye. It was the only time my mind ever quieted down. But one night, something changed. Bosley suddenly stopped walking. His ears perked up, low growl, eyes fixed on the house. Then I saw it. A shadow moved behind the upstairs bedroom window. Maria's room. I froze. Nobody should have been in there. I hadn't stepped inside that room in years. I kept it locked after she died because I couldn't handle seeing her things untouched like some shrine to a life that no longer existed. But I know what I saw. Something moved behind the curtains. At first, anger hit me harder than fear. Some idiot had broken into my house. I stormed inside, fists clenched, adrenaline flooding my chest. I tore through the downstairs and charged up the staircase 2 steps at a time. The bedroom door was slightly open. I swear to God, I hadn't left it that way. I shoved it open, expecting to find a burglar. Nothing. No broken window. No footprints. No sound. Just darkness. The air inside the room felt wrong, colder than the rest of the house. Thick, suffocating, like someone had been standing there moments earlier, breathing in the dark. I searched every corner anyway. Closet, bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Maria's rocking chair near the window was slowly moving back and forth. Back and forth, like someone had just gotten out of it. That night, I barely slept. The next evening, Bosley woke me around 2 a.m. growling toward the ceiling. Not barking, growling. Deep and violent. The kind of sound dogs make when they sense danger before humans do. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Directly above me. Maria's room. The old house creaked all the time, but this was different. These were deliberate steps. Someone walking in circles upstairs. I grabbed my flashlight and headed up. The footsteps stopped the second I reached the staircase. The silence felt unnatural, like the house itself was listening. When I opened the bedroom door, the smell hit me immediately. Maria's perfume. Fresh. Strong. Impossible. My hand started shaking. Then my flashlight beam landed on the bed. The blanket had been pulled back, as if someone had been sleeping there. I searched again and found nothing, but from that moment on, the fear started eating me alive. Every night, the noises got worse. Doors opening, soft footsteps overhead, whispering through vents that stopped the second I listened closely. Then came the kitchen lights. I woke up around midnight and found every light downstairs turn on. Every single one. The back door was unlocked too. That's when panic finally replaced pride. I called the police. They searched the property from top to bottom, including the barn and tool shed. One officer even checked the attic. Nothing. But before leaving, one of them quietly asked me something that still haunts me. "Sir, are you sure you live alone?" I laughed nervously and said yes. Then he showed me something. Mud footprints. Small ones, leading halfway down the upstairs hallway, before suddenly disappearing. After that, things spiraled. I stopped sleeping properly. I carried my hunting rifle everywhere, even inside the house. Bosley refused to go upstairs anymore. Sometimes he'd stand at the bottom of the staircase, whining at something I couldn't see. Then one night, everything finally exploded. I went upstairs around 3 a.m. because I heard drawers opening. This time the bedroom door was wide open, and Maria's clothes were scattered everywhere. Dresses, shoes, jewelry boxes dumped across the floor. It looked like someone had torn through her entire life in a frenzy. and standing near the closet was a woman, motionless, watching me. I couldn't see her face clearly in the dark, but I knew instantly she wasn't Maria. She was too thin, too short, and the way she stood there, completely still, didn't feel human. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled. I swear to God, I heard her whisper my name. I charged at her without thinking. The woman bolted past me with terrifying speed, sprinted down the staircase, and vanished through the front door before I could grab her. Bosley chased after her, barking like mad. I ran outside with my flashlight sweeping across the fields. Nothing. No footprints. No sound. Just darkness stretching forever beyond the farm. But things didn't stop after that. Sometimes I'd wake up and find muddy footprints beside my bed. Sometimes I'd hear breathing outside my bedroom door. Once, I found one of Maria's dresses hanging from the ceiling fan downstairs, slowly spinning in the dark. And then came the final night. I was sitting alone in the living room when Bosley suddenly started barking at the window. There she was again, standing in the yard, perfectly still beneath the moonlight, watching me. I grabbed my rifle and ran outside, screaming at her to leave me alone. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. I fired warning shots into the air. The sound exploded across the fields. That's when she finally turned and ran toward the tree line. But before disappearing into the darkness, she looked back at me, and for the first time, I saw her face clearly. It wasn't a stranger's face. It was Maria's. I should have driven straight home that night. If I had, I never would have seen the man in the Volkswagen staring at me from the darkness. I work for a catering company, which basically means my life is spent hauling trays of food and heavy equipment across the city at ungodly hours. Most nights I'm driving this giant company truck through empty streets while everyone else is asleep. It's exhausting work, the kind that slowly drains the life out of you without you realizing it. By the time I get home, I'm either so overloaded with caffeine that I can't sleep at all, or I crash face first onto my bed and don't wake up for half a day. That night, I got off work sometime after 2 a.m. The roads were dead silent as I drove home in my own car for once, finally free from the smell of spilled coffee and greasy catering pans. But halfway there, I realized I'd made a huge mistake drinking 3 Red Bulls during my shift. My heart was pounding, my hands were jittery, and there was no chance I'd be sleeping anytime soon. On top of that, I was starving. There's a McDonald's right off the highway about 10 minutes from my house. It's one of the only places still open that late. And honestly, sometimes those fries hit harder at 2 a.m. than any real meal ever could. I pulled into the drive-thru expecting it to be empty, but surprisingly there were a few cars ahead of me. That alone felt strange. Tuesday nights around here are usually dead. As I sat there waiting, half awake and staring blankly through the windshield, something caught my attention. An old Volkswagen was parked in the far corner of the lot. The thing looked ancient. Faded black paint, dented bumper, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. And it was backed into the parking spot like whoever owned it wanted a quick escape route. That immediately unsettled me. The dining area was closed at this hour. Only the drive-thru was open. Employees parked on the opposite side of the building, so it wasn't staff. I told myself it was probably just someone eating in their car. Still, something about it felt wrong. Maybe it was the way the car sat, completely motionless. No headlights, no interior light, no movement, just sitting there like it had been abandoned. I grabbed my food and pulled away, trying not to think about it. I didn't really want to go home yet. The caffeine was still ripping through my system, and my apartment suddenly sounded depressing. I just wanted somewhere quiet to eat and clear my head. That's when I thought about the preserve. A huge nature reserve sits near my neighborhood, wrapped around the side of a mountain. During the day, it's packed with hikers and tourists, but at night it turns into a different world entirely. Miles of black forest and silence. At the top, there's an overlook with a perfect view of the city lights. Back in high school, my friends and used to go there constantly. We'd sit around for hours talking, smoking, laughing, pretending adulthood wasn't coming for us. I hadn't been back there in years, so I figured, why not? The preserve itself closed after dark, meaning the main road up the mountain was blocked off to traffic, but locals still parked near the entrance and walked the rest of the way sometimes. When I arrived, the gravel parking area was completely empty. At least, it was for about 5 seconds. Before I could even shut my engine off, headlights appeared behind me. A car slowly rolled into the lot. My stomach dropped instantly. It was the Volkswagen, the exact same one from McDonald's. I'm telling you right now, it wasn't a coincidence. The faded paint, the dent on the bumper, the tinted windows. Same car. It parked about 30 feet away from me and killed the engine. No doors opened. Nobody got out. The entire lot fell silent. I sat frozen behind the wheel gripping my fries, so tightly the bag crumpled in my hand. Had they followed me? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they lived nearby. Maybe they came here often too. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. My window was cracked slightly, and through the cold night air, I listened carefully. Nothing. No music. No voices. No movement. Just the faint ticking of cooling engines. Minutes passed. The fear slowly started mixing with embarrassment. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe some exhausted stranger just wanted a quiet place to smoke or relax like I did. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The Volkswagen's headlights had turned off, but I could still see someone sitting in the driver's seat, watching me, completely motionless. I couldn't make out a face through the tinted windshield, only the outline of a head staring directly in my direction. I looked away immediately, pretending not to notice. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave. Instead, like an idiot, I grabbed my phone and called my friend Tyler on FaceTime. He lived only a few minutes away, and honestly, I just didn't want to feel alone anymore. I told myself if he didn't answer, I'd eat my food quickly and get the hell out of there. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then behind me, I heard a car door creak open. To my surprise, Sebastian actually answered the FaceTime call. I expected him to be asleep, but instead his tired face appeared on my screen lit by the glow of his laptop. He told me he'd been up all night finishing a paper for class. The timing honestly felt like a lifesaver. I quickly explained where I was and half-jokingly told him I thought some creepy guy might be following me. Sebastian laughed at first. Then he saw my face. 10 minutes later, he was on his way. While I waited, I kept glancing at the Volkswagen parked across the gravel lot. It still hadn't moved an inch. No lights, no doors opening, just sitting there in complete silence like a predator waiting for the right moment. The longer I stared at it, the more wrong it felt. Finally, headlights appeared down the road. Sebastian's car. The second he pulled in, the tension in my chest eased a little. I got out immediately, trying not to look nervous, and we started heading up the paved trail toward the overlook. Before the parking area disappeared behind the trees, I looked back one last time. That's when every hair on my body stood up. All 4 doors of the Volkswagen opened at the exact same time. From men stepped out, not casually either. They moved strangely, slow and synchronized, almost like they already knew what they were supposed to do. For several seconds, they just stood there beside the car, silently staring at one another. No talking, no laughing, nothing, just looking around in the dark. The sight of it made my stomach tighten. I nudged Sebastian and tilted my head toward the lot. His expression changed instantly when he saw them. Before they noticed us watching, we kept moving up the trail until the trees blocked the parking area from view. Alarm bells were screaming in my head now, but Sebastian tried brushing it off. They're probably just here to smoke, he muttered. Maybe he was right. I wanted him to be right. By the time we reached the overlook, the city lights stretching beneath the mountain finally started calming me down. The skyline shimmered in the distance like a sea of tiny stars. For a moment, it almost felt like high school again. We climbed onto the old stone barrier near the edge and started eating our food, talking about work, life, random memories, the kind of conversation you only have at 2:30 in the morning when the world feels unreal. Then we heard voices, laughter, coming up the trail behind us. I turned around and saw 3 guys approaching through the darkness. One of them was smoking a blunt, the orange ember glowing every time he inhaled. They acted relaxed, almost friendly, which honestly helped settle my nerve a bit. At first, but instead of passing by or finding their own spot, they walked directly toward us. Like they intended to, the guy in front looked rough. Tattoos covered his neck and hands. and he had a silver nose ring that caught the moonlight whenever he moved. He gave us this crooked half smile and held out the blunt. "You guys smoke?" We both said no. One of the others laughed under his breath and called us pussies. Sebastian rolled his eyes, but I couldn't stop staring at them. Something about the situation felt rehearsed, forced, like they were trying way too hard to seem normal. And then my curiosity got the better of me. Without thinking, I asked, "Were you guys at the McDonald's down the road earlier?" The effect was immediate. The tattooed guy's smile vanished. His eyes narrowed slightly. The other two stopped moving completely. For a few horrifying seconds, nobody said a word. The atmosphere changed so fast it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. That's when it hit me. There had been 4 guys in a Volkswagen, not 3. One of them was missing. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I could tell Sebastian realized it too, because he subtly shifted closer to me. Finally, the tattooed guy forced a laugh. "Yeah," he said slowly. "I work there." Almost like he knew we didn't believe him. He pulled open his hoodie just enough to reveal a McDonald's uniform underneath. Then he explained that they came to the Overlook every night after work to smoke and hang out. It sounded believable, too believable. The whole explanation felt practiced. Even Sebastian looked uneasy now. After another painfully awkward minute, we told them we were heading out. They didn't try to stop us. That somehow made it worse. We started walking back down the trail as calmly as possible, trying not to look panicked. Then Sebastian suddenly grabbed my arm. "Dude," he pointed toward the trees off the side of the path. At first I saw nothing. Then a shape shifted in the darkness. The 4th guy, half hidden behind the trees, watching us. He was holding something long in his hands. At first I thought it was a bat. Then moonlight reflected off metal. My blood turned to ice. The second he realized we saw him, he started moving toward us. "Fast, run!" Sebastian shouted. We bolted down the trail. Behind us, branches snapped violently as the guy crashed out of the woods. Then I heard the others sprinting after us too. Their footsteps thundered against the pavement, getting closer, closer. I didn't dare look back again. My lungs burned as we tore through the darkness toward the parking lot. Every horrible possibility flashed through my head at once. Robbery, kidnapping, murder. We finally reached our cars and threw ourselves inside. The second my door slammed shut, I saw the men burst out onto the gravel behind us. I floored the gas pedal so hard my tires spun. In my rearview mirror, I watched them sprint back toward the Volkswagen, trying to follow us. Fear hit me all over again. There was no way I was leading those psychopaths to my house. I immediately called Sebastian and told him to drive somewhere else first. We circled through random neighborhoods for almost 20 minutes before finally meeting near a street. Neither of us could believe what had just happened. My hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. Sebastian suddenly pulled out his phone and told me he'd secretly snapped a picture of the 3 guys while they were talking to us. Looking at the photo made my stomach sink all over again. The way they stared into the camera, completely expressionless, didn't even look human. The next afternoon, since I had the day off, we drove back to the McDonald's to report the employee. At first, the manager looked annoyed that we were bothering him. Then we showed him the picture. His face immediately went pale. "What the hell?" he whispered. He recognized the tattooed guy instantly. And then he told us something straight out of nightmare. Apparently, the guy used to work there until a few months earlier. He had dated another employee, a girl around our age, and after she broke up with him, he completely lost his mind. He stalked her constantly, waited outside after her shifts, followed her home, showed up at her apartment in the middle of the night. Eventually, the police got involved and a restraining order was filed against him. But according to the manager, the guy never really went away. He and his friends still parked in the McDonald's lot almost every night, watching. Sebastian and I left that McDonald's feeling sick to our stomachs. The more we learned about that guy, the worse everything became. It wasn't just some random creep sitting in a parking lot at 2 a.m. The guy was genuinely dangerous, completely unstable. The fact that he and his friends had followed us up the mountain suddenly felt far more sinister than I originally thought. I kept replaying the entire night over and over in my head. The synchronized way all 4 car doors opened. The missing fourth guy hiding in the trees. The metal object in his hand. The way they chased us without saying a single word. Even now, thinking about it makes my chest tighten. For the next week, every dark-colored Volkswagen I saw made my heart skip a beat. I avoided that McDonald's completely and refused to go anywhere near the preserve after dark. Part of me was terrified he'd recognize my car somewhere and decide to finish whatever they had planned that night. I still hope the police eventually caught him violating that restraining order. Because honestly, I don't think Sebastian and I accidentally stumbled across a group of guys hanging out. I think we interrupted something. And I don't want to know what would have happened if Sebastian never answered that FaceTime call. But that story isn't even the creepiest thing that's happened to me. The next one still messes with my head years later because unlike the mountain incident, I genuinely can't explain it. This happened back when I was growing up in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Nothing ever really happened there. It was the kind of quiet suburban town where teenagers had to invent trouble just to stay entertained. Back then, my friends and I were obsessed with exploring abandoned places. Old factories, empty houses, forgotten buildings buried in the woods. We thought made us fearless. Looking back now, I think we were just stupid. There was one place we kept coming back to over and over again, an abandoned church in Narberth on Elmwood Avenue. Even years later, I still remember the exact address. 198 Elmwood Avenue. The place looked cursed. The church sat isolated behind a tall chain-link fence wrapped in dead vines. Half the stained glass windows were shattered, and the bell tower leaned slightly to one side like it had been rotting for decades. Every local kid had rumors about it. Some people claimed homeless people stayed there. Others said strange rituals happened inside at night. One girl at school swore a body had been found there years earlier, though nobody could ever prove it. Naturally, that only made us want to go even more. One freezing fall night, 6 of us decided to sneak in with a bottle of cheap alcohol and spend a few hours inside. Me, Luna, Gina, Johnny, Mux, and Ally. The air that night had this sharp, icy bite that made your lungs hurt when you breathed too deeply. The trees around the church were completely bare, their branches scratching against one another in the wind like bones clicking together. We climbed over the 8-foot fence and made our way around the side of the building where one broken window gave access inside. The second I crawled through, something felt wrong. The church didn't smell abandoned. It smelled damp, earthy, almost alive. And then there was the floor, or more accurately, the lack of one. The entire first floor had been ripped out years earlier, leaving behind nothing but packed dirt and rubble. In the center of the sanctuary was a massive dark opening where concrete stairs descended into the basement. That basement was the reason everyone came there. It felt like entering another world. There were 3 rooms downstairs. 2 were open, but the third had an actual door attached to it. Old wood, cracked and swollen from moisture. That alone always unsettled me. Why would only one room need a door? We settled into the largest room first. Broken furniture was scattered everywhere. Moldy couches, overturned chairs, pieces of wood covered in graffiti. Someone had spray-painted symbols across the walls years earlier, though most had faded into black smears. Johnny was already getting loud after barely drinking anything. I remember telling him to shut up at least 10 times because his voice echoed through the basement in a way I hated. Every laugh bounced off the concrete walls and disappeared into the darkness beyond the rooms. Still, being there with a big group made it feel safer. At least at first. We spent maybe half an hour messing around, talking, drinking, playing music softly through a speaker. Then the door slammed shut. The sound exploded through the basement like a gunshot. All 6 of us jumped. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The noise had been impossibly loud. At first, I assumed someone accidentally bumped the door, but no one was even close to it. And there wasn't enough wind underground to slam something that hard. Almost immediately, Luna, Gina, and Johnny panicked and bolted for the stairs without saying a word. I still remember hearing their footsteps pounding overhead as they ran. That left me, Max, and Ally alone in the basement. And for some reason, we stayed. Partly pride, partly curiosity, mostly stupidity. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel in my throat, but none of us wanted to admit we were scared. So after standing there in silence for another minute, We slowly walked toward the room with the slammed door. I can still remember the sound it made when Max pushed it open. A long creak. Like the room itself didn't want us inside. The room was tiny. The first thing I noticed was an old dresser shoved against the wall. A cracked mirror sat on top of it, and smeared across the mirror was something red. At first I thought it was paint, but the closer I got, the more my stomach twisted. It wasn't dry. The stain still glistened slightly in the beam of my flashlight. Vet, or at least fresh. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave. Then I noticed something else sitting on the dresser. A black and white photograph. It showed a woman wearing a wedding dress, staring directly into the camera with this unnaturally wide smile. Something about the picture made my skin crawl immediately. The woman's eyes looked wrong. Too dark, too empty, like someone had scratched them out and replaced them with shadows. I backed away slowly, feeling panic beginning to rise in my chest. Then we heard another noise. Not from the hallway, not upstairs. From the room we had just left. A slow dragging sound, like furniture scraping across concrete. Mux whispered, "Nope." That was enough for all of us. We grabbed our stuff and sprinted for the stairs. I don't even remember climbing back through the window. Adrenaline completely took over. The six of us vaulted the fence and ran until we reached the sidewalk near the street. Nobody said a single word. Not one. We were all too terrified. But before I turned away from the church, I looked back one final time. And I swear on everything, there was someone standing in the upstairs window. Just a silhouette, watching us, perfectly still. To this day, I still try convincing myself it was my imagination. Maybe shadows, maybe broken glass reflecting moonlight, maybe fear playing tricks on my brain. But deep down, I know what I saw. None of us ever went back there together again. Years later, I returned once out of curiosity, only to find the entire church demolished. Nothing remained except an empty lot and pieces of broken concrete buried in weeds. Whatever happened inside that basement, whatever was standing in that window, I'll never have answers for it now. And honestly, maybe that's for the best.